The arrival of U.S. President Joe Biden in Kyiv just before the anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a major challenge for security services. President Biden announced the transfer of another $500 million military aid package to Ukraine. Its scope will include munitions for HIMARS and Javelin systems. The U.S. leader added that a new U.S. sanctions package on Russia will be announced later this week.
Economies of the world will impose unprecedented costs that are squeezing Russia's economic lifelines. Together, we've committed nearly 700 tanks and thousands of armored vehicles, 1,000 artillery systems, more than 2 million rounds of artillery ammunition, more than 50 advanced launch rocket systems.
During the bilateral talks, President Volodymyr Zelensky raised the issue of long-range weapons supplies. This conversation brought our joint victory closer. I emphasize this year will be crowned with our victory. This unjustified criminal aggression of Russia against Ukraine has united the whole world. Right now, the fate of the world order is being decided in Ukraine, and we, together with President Biden and our allies, must do absolutely everything possible to ensure that the democratic order I mentioned wins this historic battle. The U.S. president's visit to Kyiv is historically significant. The U.S. is behind its allies and not really afraid of authoritarian states. I would specify, in a country where there is a war going on, over which the United States does not have full control in terms of airspace and land operations, because U.S. presidents have appeared in conflict areas before. But here we can see from the example of Iraq, there was a completely different situation, where the Americans even had dominance in the airspace. On my way out the door, I looked at Twitter, and there I saw some tweets. I have several Ukrainian friends who knew something, but were only able to tell about it when they knew officially. It has been kept very well under wraps other than speculation. It seems to me that this is the only way that the U.S. president's visit to Kyiv was able to take place in this way. We know that he had to travel some land route from the Polish border. We didn't really know that he was in Poland. According to the U.S. intelligence community, Chinese arms and munitions may soon support Russian forces in Ukraine. In addition, diplomatic relations between Beijing and Washington are strained, due in part to the downing of a Chinese balloon that crossed U.S. airspace in early February.
That China is considering providing lethal support to Russia in its aggression against Ukraine. And I made clear, as President Biden has, almost from day one with President Xi, that would have serious consequences in our own relationship.
China's foreign ministry stresses that Beijing has so far not taken a position on either side of the war in Ukraine, and that diplomatic efforts are leading to a lasting peace rather than escalation. However, the Chinese foreign ministry spokesman's statement about the independence of China's decision is ambiguous. The United States cannot dictate its terms to China. We will never succumb to this pressure. Chinese-Russian relations are outside Washington's sphere of influence. China maintains a position on the Ukraine conflict. We encourage negotiations and a lasting peace. Meanwhile, a Foreign Affairs Council meeting was held today in Brussels at the level of heads of diplomacy of European Union countries, with the participation of Moldovan Foreign Minister Nicu Popescu. Poland is represented by Foreign Ministry Chief Zbigniew Rau.
Do we provide quicker arms to Ukraine, especially ammunition? You know that the most important pressing issue today for the Ukrainian army is to have a continuous flow of ammunition of 155 caliber, also 152, but 155 is the most important one.
Meanwhile, the Russians are shortening the distance separating their positions from Bakhmut. Russian troops continue their assault north of the city and are trying to break through Ukrainian defenses in the Luhansk region as well. The situation looked and looks serious for the reason that we are dealing with tactics of flooding the Ukrainian troops with force, with living masses. Russian troops, despite the fact that they are very often mobilized troops or troops recruited from prisoners, are not well equipped. Nuclear exercises began in Russia today. According to Ukrainian intelligence, the announcement of the maneuvers had a clear purpose. It was to thwart Joe Biden's visit to Europe, and thus to weaken Ukraine.